Welcome back. So today's episode is episode 3, and this one is about locks, buying, repair and maintenance of locks. Well, to get better you need to practice, and you can't practice without understanding the materials you have and having them in functioning order, and that's independent of the value. So whether you have an expensive lock or just a small cheap lock that you found lying around the house, it's going to have to be in working order to make sure that you can actually pick it and get better at what you're trying to do. This video is going to be about looking for new locks, or in this case second-hand locks, but new to me, repairing them if necessary and if possible, and maintenance. And I'll be spending most time on the maintenance, and I'll go through several little details on how to do that and how I would prefer to do it. But I also understand it's quite a controversial subject, especially on the materials used to maintain them. So I will glance over what I use and let it be known that there are different opinions, and I am by no means an expert on any of this, so I'll be happy to let other people spout their opinions as well. Now, getting a hold of new locks can be done in many ways. You can buy them fresh with a new pack, you can get them on Amazon, you can get them at a hardware store, you can get them anywhere really. They do cost a bit of money depending on what types you want, and as soon as you start progressing through the different types of pins and different difficulties, you're going to be spending more and more. Nothing wrong with that, and it's a good way to understand what you're buying. On the other hand, you could also try and be a little bit more creative and ask around if other people and your colleagues have locks that you could use or you can have. And you can also check second-hand markets. So today I've been to a flea market locally, and I've picked up 5 new locks. I've got 3 padlocks and 2, what would we call these? Cylinder locks, I believe. I've got a Berg 217/50. Apparently this is a really fun lock to pick, according to some of the guys on Reddit. I picked up a Tricircle 264. It's a Chinese made lock that looks like someone's tried to get into it using some large clippers. You can see how the damage on both sides of the shackle is slightly offset, showing that it's kind of a scissor action. They obviously didn't get through the shackle, but it's got some damage. I did buy all of these locks with a key, and I've checked them all and they do work, which is a very important thing which we'll get back to later. And I also bought an Abus 85-40. I'd say buying locks at a flea market, you can really spend whatever you want to spend. If you offer the guy some money, he might accept or he might not. But what it comes down to is go with a budget, have an idea of what you want, and be prepared to spend that budget. You could also consider trading the ones you already have. So if there's a lock that you're already proficient with and you believe that it's not going to add any more value to your training or learning curve, then you could offer to trade it with someone else. Maybe another fellow lockpicker, or maybe just someone who needs a lock and you could use one of their locks while they use yours. It's always worth a try asking around. Now, when buying locks, it's always good to know if the lock works. It's no use trying to pick a lock that's broken or some kind of damage inside of it that you might not be able to see. Now, I mentioned earlier that this one has some damage on the shackle, which is not really an effect or a problem for what I'm going to try and do with it. We're just going to try and pick this lock, and I'm not actually going to use it for security purposes. But it's something to keep in mind that if it's been trying to open this way and it obviously failed, they might have tried to do something with the keyway as well. So I did absolutely check this one with key just to make sure it worked, and it works smoothly. I can't see any damage around the keyway. What I'd be looking for is deep scratches, anything more than you would normally do with a regular key, and any loose parts of the cylinder or any movement that shouldn't be there. So this one looked fine on the bottom. I didn't see any problems. I didn't see any signs of people trying to get in there with a screwdriver. So apart from the damage on the shackle, I think it's fine. You can buy locks without keys if you want. Of course, we're trying to open them without a key, so you might not find a key to be absolutely necessary. The only thing to keep in the back of your mind is that you won't be able to check if it works before you buy it. Another thing to look out for is the state of the housing. So tarnish is fine, brass does tarnish, most of them are brass or coated brass. It could indicate though that someone has messed around with the lock. As I mentioned earlier, the damage on the shackle could indicate someone tried to get inside. So if you see any significant damage on the outside of the lock, something that looks like they've tried to damage it with any kind of tool, then be sure to check the insides and to check around the keyway. So say the lock has damage on it and you see that the keyway has been attacked. Is it worth buying it? Well, that's entirely up to you, but personally, when it comes to repairing a lock, I'm very new to this and I wouldn't even bother. It would cost me a lot of energy. I'd have to probably get some specialized tools, and I don't think I'd get anything out of it. I think I might as well just put it back and look for a new lock. the cost that I'm looking at per lock is not that high that I'm willing to actually invest the time and money into repairing one. What you could do if you have one at home, for instance, is try to strip it for parts. So that might be worth a try. If you have any tools to kind of take them apart, then give it a go. See if you can open it up, maybe salvage some pins or some springs that you might need at a later date. But if it's a lock that I'm looking to buy and it has damage, then I wouldn't probably look at it with the intent to repair. Now the first thing you can try to do when getting a new lock and deciding whether or not it needs cleaning, or actually starting the cleaning process, is if you have the key, to open the lock a few times and close it. See how it feels, see how it actions. So is there anything obstructing the keyway? Are the pins moving freely? Is there a lot of dirt coming out when you pull out the key? Is the key oily? So it's all stuff to look out for just to see if it's smooth. What you could also do is open the shackle and look inside and see whether there's a mess inside there. Now once you've done that, step one of the cleaning is, if it's available, try to use some pressurized air just to get rid of most of the grit and the grime. So if you use pressurized air, you can get it in cans. You can also use a compressor just to blow it out a bit and see if you can get some of that mess out already. Now once you've done that, I would clean the shackle up a bit and the body, the casing of the lock. As I said before, I'd use some paraffin oil for that, but you could use any kind of oil or cleaner if you like. So these ones are fairly clean, but this one is quite dirty and tarnished. I'll give that a quick go with the paraffin oil. I'm not expecting any huge differences. I'm just expecting it to clean up a bit so my hands don't get black. By the time the paper doesn't turn grey anymore, I think I'm done. So it's leaving a bit of coloration on the paper. Nice thing about paraffin oil is it doesn't smell very strong, so you can just use it in the house. It's not a problem. Off as much as I can. It'll be a little bit oily for a while, but that's not a problem. Now what I would advise against is actually making a bath and dipping it in the bath. I thought about doing that with the vinegar, since that's normally a good way, just let it overnight. But then I considered that you'd actually be filling the whole cylinder with a liquid, and you might not actually get any of the mess out that's inside there, but you would sure as hell make sure that it has a nice place and a nice way to settle into new nooks and crannies. So I decided against that, and I think the bath might not be the best way to go about it. If you just spray inside and use the air pressure to kind of blow out what you're blowing in, I think that might work. So what am I going to use to lube it up? I've seen some people advise WD-40, and I've seen a lot of people say that WD-40 is absolutely not appropriate for what we're trying to do here. Well, I've got something in between. It's made by WD-40, but it's a PTFE system, which is basically like a dry oil. What it does is it actually lubricates, but it lubricates in a dry manner, so it dries up very quickly, and that means it doesn't attract dust. Apparently it's also very good for cold circumstances, and since we're in winter here, it's not very cold, but it does regularly go below the minus, and I will be leaving these in my car and in a bag outside, so I've got a lot of chance that these might start to get a little bit less functional due to cold, but mostly I just don't want them to attract dust. If you were to spray some oily mixture in there, it might attract more dust and cause more grime than you actually get away with, and you actually remove at first with the oil. So what I'm going to do is use this. I've used it for other things before in the past, and it's actually worked very well. Come to think of it, it actually shows a key and a keyway here, but there are so many products selling stuff on wrong pretenses. Anyway, so I'm going to just use this, and I've tried it before. It works. I put it inside, I'll put the key in a few times, open the lock up a few times, and that should just kind of remove any thicker slime and grime that's in there. I'm going to do this above a little container, just to make sure I don't cover my whole house in it. I'm going to spray a decent amount in and let it seep in. Yes, that does cause some liquid in the cylinder. On the other hand, it is a very dry stuff. As you can see, it's already turning my skin dry. Doesn't mean it just suddenly disappears. It means that some of it evaporates, and there will be some lasting fluids in there, but we'll let those drip dry out eventually. Position the lock on different places every now and again, just to make sure that it seeps into all the areas that I want it. In the meantime, I'm going to try and find the key. So let's see if we have the smooth action. Seems to work fine. Spray some top in the shackle. There's no mess coming out with the key. You can see that the liquid that comes out is dark, it's leaving black spots. So that means the oil is doing its job. We kind of want it to come out of the cylinder and not stay in. So I'm just going to keep wiping it and let it drip as we go. I've let the lock sit for a while now. I've let it empty. By tapping it on the paper a few times like this, you can still get some more drops with dirt to come out. It seems to be working alright. As I said before, I've been using the key every now and again just to go in and out, make sure it's still working. Not that I'd expect it not to suddenly work, but what it does do is just make sure that the oil gets moved around into all little areas where it wouldn't be normally. So having done that, it leaves me really with one more thing, and that's maintenance. What I'll do with this lock now is every now and again I'll just use this stuff again to keep in the key, to lube up the keyway. I wouldn't use as much as I used this time, just a short spray. And hopefully that'll just make sure that any build-up that starts to happen around the pins or inside the cylinder gets moved around and hopefully dislodges next time I use the key. There's a few other things you can do to make sure that the lifespan of the lock is extended. Let's keep it dry and dust-free. Keep it locked as well. If you keep it locked, then it makes sure that the holes that shackle go in are also sealed. Another thing you could do is actually keep the key in, but of course the risk of keeping the key in is that the key breaks off while the key is inside the cylinder. That means you'll be left with the rest of the key inside the cylinder, which might be very difficult to remove, and it also means that you've broken the key. So that's something that I personally don't do. I just store them inside, upright and locked. Also, if you start lockpicking, avoid using very cheap metals and soft metals. Most lockpicks are made out of steel or different types of steel alloys, but just make sure you use something hard, because if you use really cheap ones, or if you start using, say, hairpins with a rubber coating on them or something, it will wear off and it can enter the keyway and stay lodged in the keyway. And what you don't want is a build-up of little metal particles and rubber pieces and stuff like that in the keyway. So be sure about what you use and make sure that it's safe. That wraps up this part of my episode 3. I hope you understand what I've tried to explain here about maintaining your locks, keeping them clean, when you buy new ones, cleaning them for the first time, and also the repair, or basically lack of repair, that I expect to be doing with locks. As usual, if there are any questions, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer.